Hi, everybody. Jennifer Schaus here. We're coming to you live today from Washington, D.C. And thank you for joining us in our webinar series as we cover the DFARS, or the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement. As you know, our webinars are every Wednesday and Friday at noon Eastern. They are all complimentary and recorded. All of the recordings can be found on our website as well as over on our YouTube channel, where we have over 780 government contracting webinars. Again, there's no charge to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you'll be alerted immediately whenever we upload new content. If you're looking for any of the corresponding PowerPoints, because many of them do have active URLs, if you log on to slideshare.net, there is no cost. You can use your LinkedIn credentials for easy access to SlideShare. Our series is winding down, but we still have sponsor and advertising options as we are here in our final 3 DFARS webinars. And if you want to register for next week's webinars, which are just, again, the final 2 over on our website, click on the tab called the DFARS. And you'll notice on the left-hand side, we actually covered the DFARS back in 2021, and then the schedule and recordings are there on your right-hand side for the current season. Keep in mind that these DFARS do have a heartbeat, and there are changes that are occurring, we'll say, in real time, so just be cognizant of the year of the recording that you're listening to. Okay, a quick blurb about us. We do provide professional services for government contractors with a primary emphasis on helping companies get onto the GSA schedule. Some of the other services that we provide are listed here, which are related to GSA schedules. But keep in mind that with the Executive Order 14240 that dropped March 20th of this year, GSA schedules will be more important in federal procurement, but it's always important to conduct your market research to ensure that that is how your customer prefers to purchase. Some of the other services we provide are for companies or organizations that are selling to federal contractors. We've got advertising in our newsletter, event sponsorship, and more. If you drop us an email at the hello@jenniferschaus.com, we'll send you our media kit, which has our pricing information. And related to that, in our newsletter, we now reach almost 39,000 subscribers, most of which are federal contractors. So send us an email if you want to advertise. On the event side, we do have an event coming up, which is related to compliance in federal contracting. It's the Common Con Conference. And we're covering topics such as CMMC, AI and proposal writing, the FAR overhaul, and DCAA compliance. We'll have a registration link that is sent out with today's recording. Okay, we want to thank our in-kind sponsors. GovEvents.com is the premier platform for posting events related to government and government contracting. Visit GovEvents.com to find all of our recordings and other events in the industry. The Fairfax County Economic Development Authority has an online calendar for events and webinars in the DC metro area. Visit the Fairfax County EDA website to learn more about government contracting events in the DC area. Also, setasidealert.com publishes a newsletter that provides opportunities for small women-owned, veteran-owned, hub zone, and 8A firms. Visit setasidealert.com for more information. We also want to thank the Virginia Apex Accelerator. That's a trusted resource and DoD-funded organization. They provide local training, counseling, and mentoring for aspiring government contractors, as well as matchmaking events. If you want to sell to state, local, or federal government, please contact your local Apex Accelerator. You can visit the links on your screen to review their training calendar, locate free resources, and schedule an appointment with a Virginia Apex Accelerator counselor today. Okay, we want to thank our paid sponsors, which is what allows us to put this series on at no cost to you. The BidSpeed platform allows users to search public sector opportunities at the federal, state, and local level. Users can also find anything from a compliance matrix to teaming partners, incumbent point of contacts, expiring contracts, and proposal templates. Discover, manage, and secure government contracts with BidSpeed. BidSpeed is an official partner of the SBA's ETG Empower to Grow program. You can contact BidSpeed today. If you are thinking about contracting with the Department of Defense, you need to prepare for CMMC. That's the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. C3 suite of CMMC solutions include C3 Command, C3 Catalyst, and C3 Core. These solutions answer the needs of every defense contractor, whether your CMMC priority is a fast defined path to compliance or you need the flexibility to manage multiple environments. C3 offers solutions. They are your partner with the deep expertise in IT, cybersecurity, and compliance. Contact C3 today. WorkPlan. WorkPlan is an online contract management and accounting tool designed for federal contractors and hosted by Amazon Web Services. Get and stay DCAA compliant, manage expenses, timekeeping, and forecasting. Plus, use the WorkPlan platform to manage your capture process and your CRM. Contractors can integrate their HR and payroll into this one easy-to-use solution. Contact WorkPlan today. Ateria. Ateria specializes in Microsoft Cloud licenses and services for government and contractors. Ateria provides a business advantage for Microsoft Government Cloud licensing, managed IT administration and security, as well as data intelligence services and solutions. They implement secure, compliant, and scalable solutions to enhance operations, reduce risk, and uncover opportunities. Contact Ateria for expert IT assistance. Okay, last but not least, before we dig into today's presentation, Gov White Papers. Gov White Papers is the central hub for government and government contractors to find and post content geared towards solving public sector challenges. With your free membership, you can add relevant white papers, case studies, data sheets, and more, making your content available to a wider government audience. Do you have the expertise but not the content? Gov White Papers can also create materials to meet your specific needs. Join for free today at govwhitepapers.com. Okay, we are here today to cover the DFARS Part 251, and we are joined today by Liza Craig and Jasmine John Louis. They're with Goodwin Law, and again, we're covering the use of government sources by contractors. I'm going to put myself on mute and turn it over to the very capable, lovely ladies, Liza and Jasmine. The floor is all yours, and thanks again for joining us today.
Okay, thank you so much, Jennifer. We are really happy to be here, both Jasmine and myself, and it's a true pleasure to get to talk to everyone and also to be able to do this presentation with my colleague Jasmine. Both of us are with the law firm of Goodwin Procter, and we are resident in the Washington, D.C. office, so right in the heart of where many of our listeners probably are calling in from. So next slide. So Jennifer, as you said, today we're going to take a deep dive into DFARS Part 251, which is the section of the Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation Supplement that covers a contractor's use of government supply sources. However, before we dive deep into these DoD-specific regulations, we're going to take a step back and set the stage for all of our listeners, so to speak.
So in terms of the context, the terms and conditions under which contractors are allowed to access government supply sources are covered by Federal Acquisition Regulation Part 51, or FAR Part 51. This section of the FAR establishes the guidelines for commercial businesses that use government resources they need to perform their government contracts. This section is very important both for government agencies and federal contractors. By allowing contractors to use federal government supply sources, this section of the FAR can assist government contractors with saving money and being more efficient in execution. For example, this section of the FAR can speed up the procurement process, which saves everyone time and money. However, despite these benefits, the government has implemented a regulatory scheme designed to maintain regulatory compliance and to protect the government's interest. Back to you, Liza.
Yeah, that's right, Jasmine, thank you. Now, under certain restrictions and conditions, contractors may use government supply sources in accordance with FAR Part 51. Now, Part 51 of the FAR, as well as the DFARS part that we're going to discuss later in this presentation have been put in place primarily to help contractors obtain goods or services that are not easily accessible in the commercial sector, or to reduce costs so that these can be transferred and these benefits can be transferred onto the government. Now, it's crucial to remember that using government supply sources for contractors is a privilege, and that it's a privilege granted subject to certain restrictions, which require contracting officer approvals. Now, under FAR Part 51, the contractor's role becomes that of the government's agent, and it is because of this agent role that the contractor is allowed to use these supply sources as the government normally does. Jasmine?
Thanks, Liza. So let's talk a bit about what a contract that authorizes a contractor to use government supply sources looks like. Such contracts will contain a contract provision added by the federal contracting officer that details the specific government supply sources that the contractor may access. The terms and conditions under which the contractor is permitted to use these sources will be clearly set forth in this provision. This includes any restrictions on the kinds or amounts of goods or services that may be obtained. The contract will also contain provisions that will require the contractor to maintain separate records for transactions involving government supply sources. Usually, a contractor will be required to keep records of all goods and services acquired, including their quantities, costs, and dates of acquisition. The federal government reserves the right to audit a contractor's records to ensure compliance with the contract provisions and to make sure that the government supply sources are being used appropriately.
All right, thank you, Jasmine. So yeah, next slide. I think we sufficiently set the stage. So now, with all of that in mind, let's take a close look at the DFARS 251 that we are talking about today. And let's start off with the policy. Now I'll read it. Notwithstanding the restrictions at FAR 51-101, which we just discussed, contracting officers may authorize contractors to use the Defense Logistic Agency Energy as a source of fuel in performance of other than cost reimbursement contracts when the fuel is funded by the Defense Working Capital Fund. There's a lot here, and it's pretty specific. So let's break this down just a little bit to see what the DFARS is talking about. Next slide. The policy talks about a working capital fund. And let's take a moment to reflect on what that is. The Defense Working Capital Fund is a type of revolving fund that's intended to operate as a self-supporting entity to fund business-like activities within the Department of Defense. So think about when the DoD is acquiring parts and supplies, maintaining equipment, maybe moving personnel from place to place, and maybe in certain instances, even conducting research and development. So this section of the DFARS is specifically focused on working capital funded activities. Next slide. Jasmine, over to you.
Thank you, Liza. So what is DLA Energy? DLA Energy is part of the DLA, which manages the Defense Working Capital Fund that Liza just discussed. DLA Energy provides energy to the military services, the Department of Defense, and other federal agencies at more than 4,000 locations worldwide. DLA Energy manages petroleum products such as jet fuels, aviation and automotive gasoline, heating oil, and lubricants. It also manages coal, natural gas, electricity, alternative fuels, and missile fuels. DLA Energy procures the following major fuels: JP5, which is a high-flash jet fuel used by the Navy on its aircraft carriers; JP8, a kerosene-based jet fuel comparable to commercial jet fuel; Jet A1, a commercial jet fuel with additive; and F76, a naval diesel fuel. Next slide, please. Now, what is the DLA Energy Bulk Petroleum Supply Chain Services? This is also part of the DLA Energy, and it provides contract support for the bulk petroleum supply chain, including worldwide acquisition of fuel-related services. This includes government-owned, contractor-operated defense field support points, as well as contractor-owned and operated defense field support points. This also includes aircraft field delivery, lab testing and environmental compliance, assessment, and remediation. Next slide, please.
And yeah, just to follow on, Jasmine, what you're saying, these organizations that Jasmine just mentioned are normally organizations that are reserved for access only by the U.S. federal government. And so again, this DFARS section allows contractor access in certain instances to these facilities and these services. Now, let's talk just very quickly about the fact that the policy here within the FAR talks about what types of contracts can contain this authorization. So going back to the FAR, if it's in the government's interest and if supplies or services required in performance of the contract are available from a government supply source, contracting officers may authorize contractors to use these sources in performing government cost reimbursement contracts. So really, really important to note that this policy allows the government to grant this authority, not only in firm fixed price contracts, but also in cost reimbursement contracts. Next slide. Now, we noted a few slides ago that the DFARS sort of provides the guidance that whenever a federal agency, whenever a contracting officer is going to authorize the use of government supply sources, that they need to follow the procedure at the PGI 251-102. Now, the PGI is basically the prescriptive rules of the road, so to speak, which really tell the government and tell the contractor how to implement or how to execute against what the regulations are saying. So in addition to providing some very prescriptive information, what needs to be included in the contract, how the contractor needs to go about notifying and documenting certain things for the government and performance of the contract and the use of these supply sources, the policy also allows the contracting officer to authorize the contractor to use the DD Form 1155 when requisitioning specifically from the Department of Veterans Affairs. So again, another instruction to the agencies and to industry with how to go about accessing these supplies and services. Now, the authorizing agency, so the entity that's issuing the contract, is also responsible for promptly considering the requests, and this is important, of any DoD supply source that's asking for the authority to refuse to honor any sort of requisition from a contractor that is either indebted to the DoD and has failed to pay proper invoices in a timely manner. So again, going back to the idea that this is really a benefit that the DoD is extending to government contractors that will allow them to use these sources. If the contractors haven't paid their bills, if they're not doing what they need to do with respect to the DoD and their obligations, they might have this privilege taken away from them. Next slide. And Jasmine, over to you.
Thank you, Liza. So let's talk about some of the government supply sources. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. And next slide. Thank you. Oh, apologies. Can you go back to slide 27? There's a delay.
I think we're there. Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Got it.
So this slide shows two types of contract clauses. DFARS 252.251-7000 is the standard contract clause that governs a federal contractor seeking to order from government supply sources. On the other hand, DoD Class Deviation 2013-00012 is your non-standard clause. This deviation encourages contracting officers to authorize contractors, including contractors with fixed price contracts to use certain government supply sources in performance of contracts in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. These sources include DLA for construction materials, as well as the GSA Central Asia and South Caucasus Supply Catalog under the GSA Global Supply Program. This constitutes a deviation from the standard policy under FAR 51.101, which generally restricts a contractor from accessing government supply sources unless it has authorization. This class deviation remains in effect until incorporated in the DFARS or otherwise rescinded. The takeaway here is that supply sources include GSA contracts, DLA contracts, Global Supply Program contracts, and all contracts that are government-wide. Next slide, please.
All right. I'm going to close us out by just talking very briefly at a high level, because the DFARS calls it out, about the contractor's ability to access and use something known as the Interagency Fleet Management System. So at 251.202 within the DFARS, we see a number of authorizations that allow a contractor to access services related to self-insurance, insurance costs, and sort of provides the framework around that. Next slide. We're just going to move through these sort of quickly. But let's talk a little bit about what the Interagency Fleet Management System is. So this is under the GSA. The GSA, the General Services Administration, is actually required by statute to basically consolidate, take over, acquire, or arrange for the operation of motor vehicles and other related equipment and supplies for the purposes of establishing a fleet management system to serve the needs of the executive agencies. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the cars, the trucks, the electric vehicles that the government uses to move people, to move individuals, to move employees, and in some cases contractors around that are doing work in support of the executive agency. The Interagency Fleet Management Services also provides for the establishment, maintenance, and operation of the fleet management systems that is in support of transporting property or passengers, and for furnishing the actual motor vehicles and related services to the executive agencies. So this exercise of this authority is subject to regulations and executive orders that may be issued by the president, but this authority goes back all the way to 1954. So stepping back a little bit, we've also got an authorization here for contractors in certain instances to be able to access in the fleet vehicle management system that the GSA operates. Next slide. Now, the fleet management system also includes GSA fleet vehicle sales, which offers U.S. government-owned cars, trucks, buses, and vans to the public at auction. So public auctions are usually held online, and approximately 40,000 cars and trucks and vehicles are sold every year to the public. But what we're talking about here is an authorization for contractors in certain circumstances to access these government vehicles and services, not the ones that are offered to the public, but the ones that are normally reserved for federal agencies and executive agencies on their own. Next slide. So if the contracting officer determines that a contractor in performance of its contract needs to be able to access vehicles, needs to be able to access vehicle-related services, the DFARS prescribes the use of a specific clause, 252 to 251-7001, which allows the contractor then to go in and, again, as the federal government's agent, they can step in and utilize these services associated with vehicles that normally would be reserved only for federal executive agencies. Next slide. And Jasmine, I think I'm handing it back over to you to close us out.
You are. Thank you, Liza. So the takeaway from today's webinar is that the FAR and DFAR sections that we discussed provide a path for contractors to use federal government supply sources, which often results in monetary savings and more efficient contract execution. Federal contractors who have this option should avail themselves of this opportunity, but be sure to pay close attention to contract provisions that dictate record keeping and performance requirements and are designed to protect the government's interests when it allows private industry to use federal sources. And with that, we'll turn it to Liza to.
Yeah, thank you, Jasmine. And again, thank you, Jennifer, and thank you to those who joined us today or may be listening. We appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. I would guess probably not often delved into topic within the DFARS Part 251. We appreciate your time. And should anyone out there have any questions about this section of the DFARS or government contracting in general, we've got our contact information. We would welcome the ability to speak with you. Thank you again, Jennifer.
Great presentation, Liza and Jasmine. Really appreciate the time and effort that you took to put together the slides, the great content, and for sharing your time with us here live today. Again, if anybody has questions, please don't type anything into the chat. Just simply email Liza and Jasmine directly. We will get the recording and the slides out within about 24 hours. Again, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, it doesn't cost you anything. You'll actually be alerted before we send out the email as those are uploaded directly. If you are watching or listening to this on our YouTube channel, give us a like, leave a comment. We would love to hear from you. And again, thanks to everybody who joined us today. We'll pick up next week as we close out our DFARS webinar series covering DFARS Part 252 and 253, and then we'll be done for the year. Thanks again, Liza and Jasmine.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.